Hey, what's going on, guys? Finally catching up on the HG GQuuuuuux line here with the Police Zaku for today's review. Really looking forward to checking this one out. Such a cool design. We do also have the regular green version and Char's version of this kit that are going to be coming out I think the next couple months. But this, of course, has been out for a few months now already. I'm sure you guys have seen a lot about this and a lot of really cool custom builds online using this kit, customizing it or using it to kit bash with other kits. I've seen a lot of really cool stuff with it. It took me a while to get my hands on it, and then been in the queue here for a couple weeks, but I'm really looking forward to checking this one out. So let's go ahead and get into it here for today's video. And so like we saw with the GQuuuuuux here and with the rest of the line too, beautiful box artwork here on the front with the Police Zaku. Just the lighting and the details there in the painting is absolutely fantastic. You even have these cool lens flares there off the lights and all these sparks from bullet ricochets and blast effects and all this stuff. Looks really, really cool here for the artwork. For the sides of the box, this is kind of interesting because if you go on here, you can see that this one is marked with a very small 2 up there, indicating this is the second release in the HG GQuuuuuux lineup. And here it's horizontal like normal, but if you go over here to the other side, you'll notice we have a vertical box art on this side, which is something that's very different. Now, this is something that I've noticed that they've started to do specifically for the American version of the releases, I believe, or international version of the releases. So I recently got a kit which was the Real Grade Shining Gundam. Now, the one that I got and reviewed and shared here on the channel was from Japan. It didn't have this vertical box art on the side, but when we got them here at USA Gundam Store, all of the kits that we got from Bandai US all had this where one side was horizontal, the other side was vertical. So it seems like this is something they're starting to do, and I don't know if it's only for the international releases, why they changed it so that one side of the box is different just for the international versions of these releases, having one side being vertical. I'm not sure. If you guys have seen any more about that, let me know, but it's kind of interesting. Here on the bottom of the box though, there we've got some more images of the built and painted kit here. It looks really cool with those markings on it, especially there on the shield. Those are going to be interesting to see how we're going to apply those. The action shot there of it shown in a couple of different poses. The articulation and posability of this looks really nice. We got the electric baton included in there as well, and then just some images there showing off some of the articulation details and gimmicks here, like the moving mono eye and all of our included accessories there. On the other side of the box, front and rear view of the built and painted kit, and then a tiny little thumbnail of what the kit looks like in the unpainted state there. We got a little bit about this story with a QR code there to learn more about the GQuuuuuux anime series. And with that, let's go ahead and pop the top on this. So as you can see, a relatively thin box, kind of standard for an HG, not very thick by any means. And then got just a couple of bags of runners there. Looks like 3 bags. And our instruction manual here, which features the same illustration from the front of the box art, just minus all the background, which always looks really cool. So I love the look of that. And then down here at the bottom, text in both Japanese and in English, alongside another photo of the built and painted kit there. Around on the back side, again, most of the stuff that we saw on the outside of the box, but some more about the Zaku machine gun. We're here, the revolving emergency lights there on the shoulder, and then the electric baton and shield. A look at the backside, got all the details here as well, and then the color guide is down here at the bottom if you wanted to match the colors. That's there in Japanese and in English as well. Opening up to the inside here, we're going to have color for these couple of pages, which is just the parts list and the beginning of the construction there for the head and the body. The inside of the manual is all going to be here in black and white for the rest of the kit. Arms, legs, waist section, and weapons all the way up to the very end there. There is a little bit of a builder's note you can check. If you want to check out that QR code, you can see some more about that. But let's go ahead and check out the sticker sheet, as we do have a fair amount of stickers on here, mostly just optional stuff as these numbers. You're obviously not going to use all of these numbers. You can pick and choose which ones you want. You have some different logos and some striping parts there to go around on the kit. And then of course, this kanji marking that goes on the shield. A little pink one there for the mono eye. Otherwise, everything else here is going to be just white decals to go on the kit. So we'll see how those look. But let's go ahead and check out the runners here, starting off with runner A. It's in 4 colors, in this very dark navy color here, and a little bit softer plastic for the tubing parts. It's pretty typical for an HG Zaku. Over here in a dark kind of purplish navy color is some accent parts there. And then our main bluish color here for the majority of this runner, with a little bit of clear red up there at the top for the revolving lights on the shoulders. Runner B is going to be the majority of our frame and joint parts here, as well as hand parts in this dark navy color there. Looks nice. nice and a little bit more kind of satin finish for these parts. More of that's going to continue here onto runner C, but less of a satin finish, a little bit slightly different finish here on the C runner. Runner D is a bunch more armor pieces here in that main blue color that we have for the armor. Runner E is going to be our weapons parts here, looks like primarily, and this runner is simply marked Zaku, not Police Zaku or anything else like that there. And lastly, runners F, G, and H, a couple of smaller runners in like a kind of grayish purple there for one part on runner F, and then in blue, 2 parts here on runner G for the sides of the torso, I believe, and then runner H, a couple of more parts on there in blue, and that's it for all the runners. Let's go ahead and check out the kit. Alright guys, here is our Police Zaku all built up. There's a lot to like about this kit for sure. Basically, I have a lot of the same feelings about this that I had about the HG GQuuuuux, which makes a lot of sense, but there's a lot to love. I really like the design of this. Super cool design, a lot of great details on there, but there's definitely some pros and cons for me personally, things that I like, things that I dislike about the kit, but overall, I mean, fantastic kit. Definitely going to be one that I'm going to recommend to you guys, but we'll get into all that. Let's start off by taking a look here at our accessories. And our accessories are going to be pretty standard for an HG Zaku kit. Unfortunately, we have limited hand options with just the 2 holding hands here on the left and the right side. We do have the addition of this open hand here for the left side only, but it does really kind of take me back to the days of the Reconquista and G kits where you would get like open hands like this, but they're just like not really an interesting pose at all. It's just outstretched and straight, kind of weird looking, very nicely detailed for sure, but the pose is kind of odd, so I'm not sure how useful that really is. We do, of course, also have our Zaku Heat Hawk here, which unfortunately doesn't have anywhere to store on the kit when not in use, and as is kind of typical for an HG Zaku, it's just all one piece here, so definitely some detail painting would help just the overall look of that. That kind of goes for the kit in general. We do also have our standard Zaku machine gun here, with standard at least for a Zaku to have a Zaku machine gun, but in this case it is a little bit different just in its design anyway, but for the most part it's kind of the same as what you would expect for a Zaku machine gun. The handle here in the front will move to the side. There is no like movable camera on it like with the standard Universal Century Zaku machine gun design, but it's interesting that this part here at the front is meant to just be a bar, but it's molded as like this flat piece with a sort of bar detail at the back. But so if you wanted that to look accurate, you would have to kind of drill and cut that out to turn it into this like support bar there that's supposed to be at the front. Would be a little bit of a task, but not necessarily the hardest thing in the world. What's new and different about the accessories for this one from a just kind of standard Zaku is that we do also have this additional shield, which will plug onto the arm. It's just a single piece there with a peg that just plugs into the back of the forearm there. It can work on either side as the forearms are symmetrical there. And on the back side of there, we have our handheld police baton here, which is just going to be a single piece as well with a little hole there in the side for storing on the back side of the shield when not held in the hand. Pretty simple, and as you can see, the sticker on there is not great. I mean, it's not terrible if you're looking at this from a distance. Obviously, it's going to be something that's even less noticeable, but I literally just put this on, and so you can imagine that over time it's going to start to peel up a bit, and it's just not going to look pretty much not going to look any better than this if you're just using this sticker. Unfortunately, Bandai is making a set of water slide decals for this, and then you could also opt to just mask this if you wanted to do that as well. But with that being the end of the accessories, I want to talk a little bit more about the stickers, because the stickers generally are not great. So you've got like these marking ones here, and a lot of these stickers are just going on rounded surfaces where they're just not going to sit flat. They are that kind of a little bit more rubbery, a little bit more stretchy kind of sticker material. It's not just like your regular kind of paper sticker. Like a little bit more thicker, rigid stickers like you would see with a lot of real grade kits. They are like thin, and so they're meant to stretch around different areas, but like even here these big ones on the front of the legs and these big ones that wrap around the forearms, they're just kind of hard to get them to lay perfectly flat and not have kind of raised bubbles, because even if you get them like right in the exact perfect position, they're just not really fantastic. I don't know, not really much of any other way to say it. Like I said, they look fine from a distance, and then you have like these little ones that wrap around this kind of like frame part here around the side of the legs, which again, they look fine from a distance. Those ones are like probably the best ones, the easiest ones, because they just basically wrap around there, fitting over what is essentially a flat surface. The problem is when these stickers have to go over a non-flat surface, that's where they're going to have trouble, and most of them do. You do have a few leftover ones, basically some different options of some stickers that you can use here, mostly just number options for that, but good to keep those, I guess, if you want to use them for something else. I would not. Oh, and of course there is a sticker for the mono eye there as well, which does look good just because, you know, it's just a little flat pink sticker there. And that's another great transition to talk some more about just the kind of gimmicks of this, because the mono eye does move. And similar like with the HG, the Origin Zaku's, the switch is a little bit difficult to get to because it's up underneath the head. I find the Heat Hawk particularly useful for this because a lot of times you can use it, fit it up there to push that part there to the side if you wanted to move the mono eye. So the mono eye will move side to side. You have to push that little bit there underneath the head though. So you might just opt to just pop the head off. It's probably the easiest, but anyway, still a cool gimmick that at least you can move that mono eye there. And for these parts here on the side of the torso, they will also move in and out as those are kind of free floating between the main center torso section and the arms. Those are connected via like the connection parts that connect the arms to the body. So that's certainly a cool gimmick. We have a pretty nice movement here in the midsection, forward and back there, side to side, something you don't necessarily see with a lot of the Universal Century Zaku's, just because of the way that it's designed, of like the cables that run or like from the backpack around to the front. In this case, it's basically going from the back side of the torso to the front side of the torso, so it's not really interfering with any of the articulation here. So you've got some articulation here a little bit side to side, and then rotation there at the midsection. Of course, the arms are going to work pretty normally because of the shoulder armor. It's asymmetrical, but it's kind of a similar problem on both sides. Unfortunately, because of the shoulder armor, you can't really bring the arms up even to 90 degrees. So it's going to be a little bit limited there. But we've got rotation at the top of the bicep, rotation actually at the bottom of the bicep as well. There's 2 rotation points there because the bicep armor piece is just basically rotating free on just a round peg there on the inside of the bicep. And then we've got our elbow joint here, which will give us a pretty full bend there. Not too bad. The wrists, as usual for high grades, are just on ball joints there. No skirt armor to speak of, as the waist section is pretty simple, just a couple of pieces there. But you do have these thruster bells here at the front and back of the waist that are on ball joints, so you can slightly adjust the position of those if you need. And then the hips and these big beautiful thighs here are certainly one of the most unique points of this kit. Quite the interesting construction, and I really like the look of these. It's definitely quite unique. They are going to be a little bit in the way though. If you wanted to have the legs spread out to the side, you can kind of position the legs out a little bit like that. They kind of have to be out at an angle, but then of course you can bring the legs up to the front very far. You do have a nice double joint here in the knee that will give you a full bend there, basically to the point where the foot, like the back of the leg, is going to be running into this thruster bell here sticking out the back of the leg. That's going to be about the extent of your knee bend, but a nice full knee bend there. Those thruster bells on the back of the leg can also be adjusted slightly, as those are also just on ball joints there. You can like kind of push them all the way in for a nice kind of solid, just straight angle there. The ankle joint will swing quite far side to side, so you can get a pretty nice wide stance there. The toe, although it looks like this toe part like might bend, it actually does not. So the foot is just like a solid piece there. Full detail underneath, making the feet look very much like some like boots, which makes a lot of sense for this like to look like kind of police shoes or whatever. When I was building this, really kind of reminded me of that meme, the "What Are Those" meme. Kind of a classic throwback there, but just really kind of looks like kind of your like standard issue police or military boots sort of, right? So it kind of makes sense that they would be designed to look like that. But that said, I do wish that we would have had a toe bend there. Would have been nice. And that goes back to something that I want to talk a little bit kind of more generally about this, maybe towards the end of the review. But one other thing I want to point out is, of course, the lights up here at the top are very cool. And one thing I was worried about is those being prone to falling off. I don't think that they are actually. Putting those on, they are actually quite tight on there. Not to the point where you feel like when you're pushing those on, it's gonna like just snap this part off. But I would be careful about that because this is a thin piece and those are relatively tight. So when you're pushing that clear piece onto there, just make sure that you don't snap that bit off there on either side. It's a little bit more reinforced on this side, and you're kind of meant to cut out that little, the little triangle bit there in the corner. And over here, it's like a little square bit that's meant to be cut out. It's kind of similar to like what we saw on the machine gun, how I was saying this center bit is meant to be cut out if you want it to look accurate anyway. But just in case you might lose those clear parts, one thing that I would recommend to you guys is save these bits of clear red plastic from the runner, or at least one of these or something, just so that you have some leftover, because it wouldn't be very difficult to scratch build a new piece if you needed to. You just need to basically cut a little bit there and just kind of file it down, sand it down just to get it nice and smooth and clear again, drill a little hole, and then you basically just have a little replacement light piece if you need. So something to think about, to maybe hang on to, just just in case. And I do have another bonus tip that I want to talk about at the end of the video, so stay tuned for that. But let's take a look at some poses here with this guy then. And in doing so, I want to come back to a couple of things that I mentioned at the start of the review portion of the video. Number one, just being that this reminds me a lot of the GQuuuuux in that the design is really cool, very unique, and I like that. The construction process to match, I mean, not just like the mechanical design of the mobile suit, but also just like the model kit design, putting this kit together. It's quite the unique experience. Doesn't feel like kind of building your standard HG, although there are a lot of familiar beats in there, of course, but the construction process is unique and that's refreshing. And so I do really like that. There are a number of seam lines in there though, thankfully not on that rounded shoulder part, which is a typical seam line area for an HG Zaku, but like on the forearms, for example. And then also on those big round tank sections on the thighs, there's some seam lines there. And so, like I said, the whole design and construction process comes with a different series of pros and cons. Great design, really cool construction, but there are a few tricky seam lines that are going to be difficult to work with. And that kind of leads into the other point that I want to make about these is that these designs are kind of almost too complicated for their own good to be made into like HG kits. They're going to take a lot of work if you really want them to be like show accurate or anime accurate. It's a lot of little color apps, and this was especially true more so on the GQuuuuux than on this one. It's kind of less the case, but still definitely the case where there's a lot of little color apps that you're going to have to mask and paint or hand paint in, and little modifications that you're going to have to make, like just like I said, removing seam lines, modifying those bits on like the shoulders, the machine gun that I pointed out where you'll have to cut out little bits and things like that. And so it's great that these designs are detailed and these kits are as detailed as they are, but with that detail kind of comes its own series of challenges that you might have to face depending on how accurate you want it to look. Now that said, I've seen loads of really cool custom builds with this where people kind of like just taking it in their own direction, which is awesome. But like I said, it just comes down to kind of how anime accurate you want it to look. And so that's one of the things that I feel like is a little bit of a drawback for these designs, is that it's kind of difficult to do that in this size, in this scale, in this complexity. I think if and when we ever get any master grades from this series, they'll definitely be a lot nicer just because they can do so much more with that larger scale. But other than that, just kind of goes without saying, I'm just not really a fan of the stickers here. Definitely would recommend getting the water slide decals when those come out if you wanted to use those, or just kind of, you know, doing your own decal scheme with whatever decals. You also have the missing color apps like the inside of the thrusters, which are supposed to be red. If you guys missed on the USA Gundam TV YouTube channel, I recently made a video over on that channel about how to paint the inside of the thruster bells, so check that out as that would be particularly useful for this kit. But overall, all things considered, guys, this is still definitely going to be a kit that I will recommend to you. A really cool design. There is the upcoming couple of different versions. There's a typical kind of green Zaku version and also the Char's Zaku like kind of red version, so you will have some variation options available for this design. I would definitely recommend checking out at least one of them. I'm looking forward to checking out the other two when those come out, but that's it for this one. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. What do you guys think about this? Last thing then real quick, the other tip that I wanted to recommend you guys, if you wanted to make a kind of a more traditional like Tonfa style police baton, you can actually just take a little piece of the runner here. This is from runner E. We can just kind of cut this down to the general shape, and then I'm just going to file and scribe this a little bit just to get it into the right shape. It doesn't have to be anything complicated. This is just super simple, and like you could make it much nicer if you want, but let me see what I can do with this here real quick. And after we're done just kind of sanding and cleaning it up, here you can see as an example. Now this is just, again, something very simple. The runner has a bunch of bubbles in it, so I have holes here at either end, but you just can see it just, again, as an example, something you can make if you wanted to make something really easy. Here as a very appropriate sort of police accessory. We do have the baton, but if you, like I said, if you wanted something a little bit different style, there you go, perfect fit into the hand. The runners typically run around 3 millimeters in diameter, which is usually about what the size of weapon handles are for 144 scale kits. So usually you can assume that the runner is going to be a good size to fit into most HG hands, and it worked out perfectly in this case. So there we go, we've got our custom weapon. As always, guys, thanks so much for checking out the video here today. Make sure to check out the link in the video description down below to USA Gundam Store. We've got lots of great Gundam models, paints, tools, and supplies, everything there on the website. So check that out. And thanks so much for all of your support. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like. If you're not yet subscribed, you can subscribe there down below as well. And with that, I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye, guys.